Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Nourish Child Podcast. I'm Jill Castle, your host. And today we are talking about children with ADHD and how to support them in their behavior. And because this is a show about nutrition and feeding kids, we're going to go general, but we're going to hone in on how to help kids sit at the table, how to help them be less impulsive around food in the kitchen. So in order to help you understand all of this, I have a guest today. Her name is Holly Blanc Moses. She's a mental health therapist who has supported children and teens with autism, ADHD, and anxiety for over 23 years. She's the host of the Autism ADHD podcast and Autism ADHD TV, where she provides parents and professionals with important information on mental health, behavior, social interaction, and academic skills. Most importantly, Holly is the mother of two differently wired children. Holly, welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited to talk about ADHD and how we can support kids in the arena of kitchens and meal times and things like that. But before we dive into some of those topics, can you, in your own words, just tell people what you do and how you got into this area of mental health and support?
Yeah, I'm a psychologist out of Raleigh, North Carolina. So I have a private practice here, and I'll make sure I give you that link. And then also I have education materials such as online courses for social skills and challenging behavior. But really, it was back in the day when I started and I had an interest in children that were differently wired. And I noticed that, why do people behave in the ways that they do? Why do people make friends in this group versus this group? There was just fascinating to me as far as the behavior part of humans. Some people were doing well in certain classes. Some people struggled in other areas. And then as I noticed too, when I got into middle school, noticing that other children were really struggling and some children were even kept separate. Now I'll be 48 this year, so it's been a while. Before there wasn't much inclusion. And I couldn't figure it out. I saw these kids that looked different or maybe behaved in a different way in the hallways, but never in my classes and not during recess or in the cafeteria. So I wanted to know more. So I started out with my primary interest day one in college, knew what I wanted to do. And then I went from there and I learned everything I could about parenting stress, about behavior, about what kids need. But I really didn't get it, honestly, Jill, until I became a parent myself. Because you know what they say, a perfect parent is a parent without children.
Yeah. I've never heard that before, but that's right? That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I was a perfect parent before I had kids.
Yeah.
And even doing this for my living, for my work, all these hours specializing in kids with ADHD, autism, and anxiety, I didn't really get it fully until I became a parent myself. So I wasn't able to have children in the way most people are, so because of some health differences. And so we ended up having to adopt, which that was our journey. And so we have two boys. Our oldest is autistic and has severe ADHD, and our youngest has severe ADHD and some learning differences too. And so this is really coming kind of full circle for me that I come to you today with not only the professional hat on, but also the parent hat.
Which is awesome. I think that is so similar for so many professional careers. When you choose to be a dietitian, for example, I mean, you can't help but apply your knowledge to your own children, and that reinforces or counteracts what you've learned. And so your journey is, as a professional, is very caught up in mothering and parenting along the way. So as you talk about your journey and, how you got to this place of working with children with ADHD and autism, you do have a private practice, and tell me a little bit about, your work in private practice. What age range of children are you seeing? What does that kind of look like for you?
I love it. And you know what's lovely about getting up in the morning and just absolutely loving what you do,
Yeah.
right? Like I just can't wait to get up and get to work. I have the coolest kids in their families. I mean, I support the most wonderful people. And just like most psychologists, I see people, I see many people per day. And we can work in lots of different ways. Some children, I think right now, my youngest patient is 5. And currently, the oldest person I'm working with is 28. So, it really does differ depending on what they're needing. And it could be working on independent skills. It could be working on, social differences. It could be working on the parent-child relationship. It could be challenging behavior. There's so many different things that we could be working on depending on what that individual child needs and what that parent needs help with.
So I want to zoom out because, from a nutrition standpoint, nutrition is complementary to the management of ADHD in children. It's not curative. I've done episodes on this podcast before on the topic of ADHD, and I always want to say to the audience, if you look at the scientific research, nutrition is not curative. It is complementary. And so when we're talking about behavioral modification, for example, and I understand, and you enlightened me a little bit before we got started, that it really isn't called behavioral modification anymore. So, but when we're talking about that, I'd like you to sort of explain what it is considered now, and the role of supporting behavior in the management of ADHD. Can you give us sort of an overarching explanation of where behavior falls into helping kids with ADHD?
Definitely. And we are, again, we've got these kids or teens or even adults. We want to support them, right? I mean, this is hard. And first, we need to look at education, because those of us that don't have ADHD, we have these expectations and, you should be able to do this and you're this age and, other kids are doing this. We need to first educate ourselves on how an ADHD brain works, and knowing that it's like popcorn, right? Like they're always thinking, they're always busy, they're distracted by what's happening inside their heads and outside their bodies. And there's so much going on for them, and they're under a lot of pressure. So we have to understand that. As really tired parents, I actually got my mommy needs sleep coffee mug as we speak.
That
Because
reminds me,
it's true,
I got my mug too.
right? It's true. The kids are doing the best they can, even if it doesn't feel like it to us in the moment, because we're human, we get frustrated. They really are doing the best they can in that moment. And I think when you start from a place of education and understanding about how their bodies and their brains work, and understanding that they are, in fact, in that moment, doing the best they can, everything can change.
Yeah.
Because we can then come from a place of support and love and kindness instead of blaming. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. These kids come to me in my office, and often they are depressed and anxious. And we know, unfortunately, kids with ADHD are much more likely to experience anxiety and depression than other kids, because they feel like everything they do is wrong. They're constantly corrected. Stop doing that. Stop this. Do this. You should be able to. I mean, imagine living that way.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
So when we come from a place of support, kind of understanding what it might be, knowing we can't be in their shoes, but understanding what it might be like for them, we can really come from a place of caring instead of blaming. And that changes everything for that child. We then open up the conversation to, why is this tough for you? And really listening to them. Traditionally back in the day, when we would look at behavior, we rarely even included the child in it. It was ridiculous. That's like, we're talking about this child. They are the ones that we should be getting information from, whether it's communicating through their behavior or words they're using or us noticing what's happening for them. So we really need to consider everything that might be happening for them in a gentle and loving way instead of blaming them. And also knowing that their behavior can be inconsistent. One thing they can do one day, say, well, you did that yesterday. Well, today is today. And there's
Right.
lots of variables why, or lots of reasons why, and different variables that a child may not be consistent in their behavior. They may not have mastered it fully yet. They may be tired. They may be hungry. They may be sad and they don't communicate with you because they don't have those skills yet. They may be rejected at school socially. I see that all of the time. So when we're looking at behavior support, first we want to put our scientist hat on and try to emotionally regulate ourselves before we say anything to our children at all, because we want to build them up and support them, not tear them down. Because tearing them down is what they're really feeling like. And when they come to me and say, I'm bad, I can't do anything right, everyone hates me, no one wants to be friends with me, they're feeling horrible. Even if they're not telling you that.
Yeah.
So we really want to consider that when we're supporting them. We want to know why they're doing what they're doing, why it's hard, why something's boring. We want to open up that communication so we can support them more.
So when you're talking about, just as adjunct complementary support with behavior, what are some of the top line things you're looking to do aside from educating the parent? When you're working with the child, for example, what are some of the sort of top behavioral areas that you look at?
I definitely look at communication. I
Okay.
see that being foundationally difficult for kids with ADHD. They are doing without thinking, right?
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
often experience all these feelings and emotions, but they're not telling us what's happening for them because they don't have those skills yet. They haven't mastered that yet. And so it looks like they're doing things on purpose to be bad or annoying, these other things that are happening for them. But that's really not the case. We're just missing it. So
Mm.
oftentimes I'll go in and find, oh, this kid isn't telling us what's happening for them. And if they are, they're getting dismissed. So for instance, if a child says, I'm not doing it because it's boring, usually that means it's hard in some
Mm.
way, or it's too much, or I didn't understand the instruction. So when you come from a place of communication, then you can really start looking at all the pieces, because under boring or under I don't want to are really the most important parts. So we can put in those systems, put in those strategies, put in those tasks that they need to be able to build them up instead of tear them down.
Mm-hmm. Communication is a good one. And I think, all children and parents, I think that's a cornerstone of getting any child to do anything you want them to do, whether it be eat their vegetables or sit at the table. Communication and how you communicate as a parent, I think, is so essential. I want to touch on, I'm writing this book, Size Wise, and one of the things I'm researched and was writing about is impulse control, and how that's part of executive functioning and something that is learned very early, like in the preschool years. I think I read something like by around like age 4, preschoolers are really sort of learning impulse control. And impulse control is sort of, if you don't have it, I know with any child, it can look like, shouting out in the classroom without raising your hand first, for example. but it can also sort of appear in the kitchen. It can appear at the table. Can you talk to us about that a little bit and help parents understand how impulse control is a facet or a feature of ADHD and how it might play out in the world of food and eating?
Oh, that's a great question. You're hitting me with all kinds of goodness.
Oh, good.
Here, Jill. I like it. Okay, so the impulse control, and that is really hard. That's what oftentimes parents will come in or teachers will tell me, this is creating a big issue, right? The child's always in trouble because they're always told to stop. So you're absolutely right. What we find is typically developing kids with typical executive functioning will start developing this skill really early. And what we see is this internal speech that they have. It's really interesting. Their internal speech will guide their behavior. And they don't necessarily have to experience getting in trouble for everything before they stop. They can also see what the other kids are doing. Oh, Jill over there, I'm going to use you.
That's
Jill
fine.
over there just got in trouble for doing that. Well, I know not to do that. Right. So we are experiencing and like a sponge kind of sucking in all this information about how are we supposed to kind of stay in line and do what's expected and follow the rules. We're actually speaking inside our heads. Oh, I want to, but I better not because, right? We've got this reason and it happens so fast for neurotypical kids. It's just like lightning, really, really fast for them. Now, when you are developing your brain develops more slowly in those areas. You don't see that internal speech in these kids, especially kids with severe ADHD, right? The ones that are constantly getting in trouble and active in impulsive ways. And so really we're building in that internal speech. And sometimes what I'll do, and this is part of the communication, right? Is I am building that part in because it's not there. And that is scary for parents. It's like, what's going to happen? What are they going to do? Are they going to get hurt? I mean, kids with ADHD get hurt more often, right? And we can see why they behave and move their bodies and move their mouths in impulsive ways. So that impacts their social relationships, impacts academics, like you said, blurting out, but building that in. And that may be a plan. And I'm just throwing this out because everyone needs something individualized. But what if we build in that plan if I wanted to, but I didn't because? So if I'm able to build in that internal speech and make it visual, for example, if we have it written down, I wanted to, but I didn't because in that bright paper that gets their attention, we're going to do that and we're going to put it everywhere because their brain is busy. And then we can reward them for coming and telling us, I wanted to take that candy. I'm not supposed to, but I didn't because I didn't want to get in trouble. Or if they're more advanced and older, I didn't want you to not trust me. Right? So really building in that internal speech and inner speech is incredibly important.
Wow. Yeah. And so that's part of sort of actively helping a child better control their impulses, building in that speech and their internal, in their internal dialogue. So interesting. So
and
let's take
it ourselves as models.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we do it all the time in our heads, but we don't share that with our kids.
Yeah. 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 That's so true. Even as adults, around food, we've learned over time to, and I was supposed, and you're the expert here, but I suppose adults who have ADHD sort of have learned that internal dialogue over time. But the challenge for children is they're living in a world where there are expectations of their behavior. And if they don't have that internal dialogue, they don't have that impulse control sort of inherent, that's where the sort of challenges come up, right? That's where the kids get in trouble. The kids are, told no all the time. Hey friends, this episode is sponsored by Seed. You've probably heard about the importance of nurturing kids' gut health. Seed is a microbial sciences company and creator of PDS-08, Pediatric Daily Synbiotic, a 2-in-1 probiotic plus prebiotic that's been studied in children ages 3 through 17. It contains 9 probiotic strains clinically studied for benefits across digestion, respiration, and skin health. 95% of children and adults in the U.S. do not reach their daily recommended fiber intake. With 5 grams of prebiotic fiber per serving, PDS-08 is a meaningful and easy complement to a healthy diet. It's also free from added sugar, artificial colors, preservatives, and 14 commonly recognized allergens. PDS-08 sachet is designed to protect and shield from moisture, humidity, and light, so you can take it wherever you go. No refrigeration necessary. Start supporting your child's gut and health today. Go to www.seed.com/nourished for a 20% discount. That's SEED.com/nourished for a 20% discount on your first month of PDS-08.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, if you think about, let's think visually, if we think about 2 mountains, right? And so a child is over here with ADHD, and here's the expectation. And if we don't look at this expectation seriously, then they are constantly going to fall. Fall. And we're not meeting them where they are. We're not teaching them in the way their brains work. And then we're disappointed and mad at them because they're not meeting our unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean we don't have expectations. That's not true. But giving them repeatedly an expectation they don't meet is really setting them up for failure.
Yeah. And interestingly, I've been reading about delayed gratification and impulse control related to executive functioning in children of neurotypical development. And there are genetically some children who will be more vulnerable to not being able to delay their gratification. So this is not something that's, strictly around children with ADHD. Children without ADHD can have impulse control as well. And we can see that play out with food. So let's get into how we help support children's behavior around eating situations, around food, at the dinner table. Where can we help parents sort of with that sort of situation when it comes to impulse control and supporting their children's behavior?
That's a really good question, because it definitely all does come together. We're likely to see a lot of these things around food. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we need to manage our expectations, check ourselves. And I have been working in this field for 23 years. I still have to check my expectations all the time, because expectations are human.
Yeah.
Right? We're kind of all built with them. And we've been, the longer we've been alive, the more kind of deep our expectations are, right? And so we have to do some work around that. And then put our scientist hat on and think of it as we're looking at this situation without judgment. We're going to look at it and see what's working, what's not working, what are our goals, and look at it objectively. Because when you can check your own emotions, then all the beauty happens. So that's always something that I recommend first, is check in. And I check in with myself because I have to. My boys are not so easy. And I am constantly having to regulate myself, because I don't want to blame them for how they're built, because that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right. And they're great kids. They're awesome. But I'm not going to shame them with my unrealistic expectations. So we do really need to look at that part. So some families, you mentioned the table, some families, that's a value. This is a value for our family. We sit at the table. This is something we do. And we do know that when families come together at the table, they typically have better relationships. So that is something that a lot of families value. And I think that's a great thing. But then at the same time, we have to look at all the other variables. We have to be the scientist. Why is our child struggling to sit? So first, let's look at some data, right? It sounds kind of scary, but it's really not. So I suggest taking a few days of data. How long is the average time my child can sit? And I'll tell you why that's important. If we have an expectation, we're going to sit for 30 minutes at the table. But when you take that data and find out your child sits an average of 3 minutes before getting up, that's not going to work, right? That child's going to fail. They're going to drop off that mountain and they are not going to meet your expectations and you're going to be constantly mad.
Yeah.
So we need to first find out where they are. Where are they now? Let's get a snapshot of that. And then having a goal is great, but let's figure out how we can get there. We can't expect them to jump across the mountain. That's not fair. So we're going to build that bridge.
Yeah.
Right. So there is the other part of that too, where if a child sits at the table and they're inattentive, perhaps, maybe not hyperactive, and it takes them a long time to eat. Sometimes parents will come and say, it takes them an hour to eat their dinner. So ADHD, again, hyperactive impulsive type, inattentive type, and combined type. There's 3 different ones we have to think about. So again, stepping back, looking at the data, when it comes to ADHD, a lot of these kids are taking stimulants or other medication. So we have to think about the medication. A lot of times parents will come into my practice and say they won't sit for dinner. And really what we find out when we put our scientist hats on, their medication is getting out of their system at the end of school and they are starving.
Yeah.
They are so hungry and they are eating a bunch of food right after school. And an hour or 2 later, they're not hungry.
Yeah.
And not only are they not hungry, they're bored and they're having to sit at the table. So we really do have to manage our expectation of medication when they're eating and how much we expect them to eat at the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I oftentimes, from the nutritionist hat on, I oftentimes will tell parents, flip dinner to after school, just like flip those things, get that big nourishing meal in right after school, because that's when the medications are wearing off. That's when the appetite is really high. And so, you're really sort of taking advantage of opportunities when they come to you. But I love the idea of really look at your child and see how long they can sit. And I oftentimes find parents, will think that their child can sit at the table for 45 minutes to an hour. You're really talking about a teenager who's neurotypical. That's way down the road. That's adult time at the table. Where you're looking at
can't do that.
I know. Well, I can if I have a great conversation and a great meal and, but to expect our children to do that is, that's a really high expectation. It's really hard to fulfill. And the younger the child, the less time, even if they're neurotypical, the less amount of time they can sit and stay at the table. So I get the whole expectation thing. That makes so much sense to me. What does a parent do though, so they find out that their child really only sits for 3 minutes. They'd like them to sit for 30. How do you get from 3 to 30?
That's a really good question. Okay, so it really depends on the child. And there are some neat prep things that we can do that I know, Jill, you talk about too, is getting them involved with cooking. It is brilliant to get them involved in cooking. And of course, we want to be safe, around stoves and things like that. And what we want to do is help them understand, because that is an independent skill, because sometimes children with ADHD are a little behind in their independent skills. So we can build that. We can help them follow directions. And what's beautiful about cooking is the instructions are still there. They can refer back to them as much as they need to. And that's lovely. And then it's something you can all do together and be a part of it. And it's just a great skill, again, for following directions and building confidence in those independent skills. Because remember, they get corrected so much of their lives. We really want to build confidence in every area we possibly can. Another thing is setting up chores, like, okay, I would like you to get the forks. So take the forks out of the drawer, take them over to the table and set them down. Be very specific in the instructions that you're giving, because if we're not with kids with ADHD, the forks may end up completely in another room. So we want to make sure our instructions are clear. We try to give one instruction at a time. And, again, if they can handle multiple instructions, that's great. But if not, that's okay too. You can also write down that dinner time routine so they can refer back to it and remember what they're supposed to do. Also, a great tip is get them moving, preferably about 15 minutes of movement before sitting down.
Okay.
That's going to be important. We know we've got nice research. If you could get them outside, great. That's even better in the green areas. But getting them moving for about 15 minutes prior to sitting down are going to help them be able to sit longer and feel better in their bodies. And of course, that's good for school as well. We know that can help with performance in school. Yeah. Another thing to consider are wiggle seats. And they are just these small kind of rubber discs with air in them that can be on the seat, allow some more movement while the child is in the seat. I mean, certainly we don't want them flying off of the chair. So that's something to consider, because some kids will do that. So consider the wiggle seat if that seems like a safe thing for your child to try. Another thing is, if your child is small and their feet are not hitting the floor, it's a good idea to try the stool, a small stool. Maybe you have one in your bathroom where they can just plant their feet on there so they're not feeling like they are going to fall over and they're trying to compensate. So that's something to consider. Also, fidgets are cool to have at the table, believe it or not. Not loud ones and obnoxious ones, but more quiet ones. And those are always good for a child to be able to get a hold of. There are also bands that you can purchase. I have them in my office on some of my chairs here where the children can kick, and it allows them to get a little bit of resistance with the bands on the chair. So that can also help them be seated. Something that I really like is whole family participation. So it's not just singling this child out. It could be that you're having, a big stretch every couple minutes to start out. Like, again, we're going from that 3 minutes on. We're not going to jump to 30. We're just going to build, right?
Yeah.
So stretches, some great conversation around taking bites. So maybe you're going to guess another family member's favorite color after you take 2 bites, right? So you can kind of coordinate eating, and then maybe a joke time, or what was the best part and worst part of your day. That's something to consider, because we want to know what's happening for our kids. And a lot of them, again, don't have a lot of communication in telling us what's happening. So we want them to know they're important. We want them to know that we care about what's happening for them and how they think and feel. Another thing it's great to do is share a mistake that you made. Parents, this is so important for us. What is a mistake that you made and what you learned from it? And everybody's sharing that, because we all make mistakes, right? Yeah. Every single day we're making mistakes. Or maybe if you can't think of one that day, you can maybe bring one up from the past. But they need to know that they aren't the only ones making mistakes. Because believe me, when they come into my office, that's exactly how they feel.
Yeah. And that just
builds everything wrong. Yep.
Yeah. And that contributes to stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. Hands down. And again, you can make it fun. Like, after you take another bite, I want you to guess what animal I'm thinking of, and you can ask me questions about it. I mean, we can just get really, really creative with this.
Yeah. And so I think those are all amazing ideas. And I think those are going to really help parents who have children with ADHD sort of structure that mealtime environment more favorably for their child. As a professional, I do have a question that came up for me as I was hearing you, listing all of these things. And I thought that, when I'm working with families, again, neurotypical children, families of neurotypical children, oftentimes I'm recommending, and I'm saying this for the other professionals out there that might be listening to this episode, we're oftentimes saying no distractions at the table. no books, no toys, no widgets, no TV, because we want children to, pay attention to the food that they're eating, enjoy it, taste it, engage in the environment. And the sense is that the more distractions, the less able children are, to engage. So as I hear you listing, the fidget, the rubber bands, the toys at the table, the sort of blocked in conversational topics that are sort of tied to, eating, and then we'll talk about this, and then, I think those things are fabulous. But can you explain and I think I understand what you're getting at, but I'm wondering if parents out there might be like, wait, I thought we were not supposed to distract our kids at the table. And these recommendations are, a lot of them sort of tying into a little bit of distraction. But I think what you're trying to tell us is a little bit of distractions helps them engage. Is that what
What? I love that you said that, because there is a common misconception about ADHD. And a long time ago, we thought kids were overstimulated. We thought they had too much stimulation, and we actually had to break it down, be really quiet, don't have distractions. And that is really what we thought a long time ago. We thought if we took away all the distractions, then they'll be able to focus. But really what we know now is kids with ADHD are understimulated. They're understimulated, and that's why stimulants work for them, a lot of them, because they're introducing a stimulant inside their body because they're understimulated. So when that voice comes up for you, because we are all human, we go with what we know, that's what we learned before. Think about how they are moving their bodies and their brains are moving and they're creating their own stimulation, right? So let's give it to them. Because if they are understimulated, they're going to get up, they're going to walk around, they're going to have a really hard time sitting. They might even have a meltdown because they're not communicating to you what they need. But really, it's more stimulation, not less.
That's such a nugget for parents out there, I think, because it does run counter for what we might advise for neurotypical children, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very different. And another thing to consider too, Joe, I wanted to mention is there is a product that I really like. It's the Time Timer Plus. And so this is actually it. For those of you who are watching the video, you kind of move the dial and show the red, and then it ticks away. So something I know parents listening and watching right now have heard from their kids, this is forever. I'm never going to be able to play my video game after dinner. It's going to take forever. And they're just, everything is forever, never, and always, because that's part of those executive functions is understanding time. Their brains are not built to understand time the way we are. So we have to consider that, and we have to show time. So for instance, if your child can sit an average of that 3 minutes, we want to set that timer for maybe 4 minutes before they go take a movement break and come back, right? Gotcha. So we want to show them the time that literally you will not die at the table, even though you're feeling like that right now. It will not be forever. But we can show that time, because if we don't, it's going to feel like forever to them, and they may not be able to hold it together for very long. But if they see it's not going to last forever, you'll be amazed of what can happen. But again, we don't want to set the time for too long, because that's going to be overwhelming for them. And if they get overwhelmed, it's probably too long. We probably need to make it less.
Yeah. Such great tips. I just love this conversation because I think you've debunked some common myths or common thoughts about children with ADHD, but you've provided a lot of great tips for parents out there who might feel a little lost with sort of mealtime and how to really make those a little bit more successful for their children, but also for their entire family. So I guess as we wrap this up, I want to sort of thank you for being here, and also invite you to share where families can reach you, get in touch with you, share what's going on with you in the future, so that, if parents want to engage and track you down, they'll be able to easily do that.
I love it. I want you to come track me down. I've got lots of great things for everybody on autism, ADHD, and anxiety. I've got freebies. I've got the ADHD podcast where you get lots of doable strategies that can help and support your child. Or if you're a professional that's listening, you're a client, if you're a teacher, you're a student, there's all kinds of great goodness in there. And that's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. On YouTube, I have Autism ADHD TV, so you definitely want to get to that. But something that is super, super exciting that's coming up just next week, so October 10th, is the ADHD Summit.
And tell us about that, Holly.
So excited about this. It's going to be amazing. So on October 10th, on Monday, you're going to have the opportunity to learn from more than 30 amazing experts in the field. We're going to be talking about sleep, medication, procrastination, challenging behavior, dealing with electronics, social skills, nutrition from the fabulous Jill Russell. So you're going to want to get that. And below, we're going to have the registration link. So make sure you go get that because it's the ADHD Summit. It's going to have everything that you want and it's free.
Awesome. Well, I will include the link to your website, Holly, the link to the ADHD Summit, and the link to your podcast in the show notes over at thenourishchild.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise. I think parents, as I said, will get a lot out of this. And we're wishing you all the best as you embark on this big project of yours in October. And let's stay in touch.
Great. Thanks so much, Jill. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Nourish Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.